Well, if you're going to hit the live button, then I guess I'm going to have to get into character here and act like I know what's going on.
Too late. We're already live.
Well, all right. So, what are we going to talk about? The weather, fishing, politics,
I don't know, or all the
ducks?
above. Mr. Josh, do you have a preference about what we talk about tonight? Or maybe it's a mixture of politics and ducks.
I think it's going to be a mixture of all of it plus some.
Yeah.
This has been the show that everyone's bugged me about forever.
All right. Well, Mr. Lowrie, would you like for me to go ahead and get the quick housekeeping out of the way, and then I'll just, of course, sit here and be quiet and maybe ad lib or be comic relief every now and then?
By all means, and I'm waiting on my notification that it's live. It's yet to come through. So, by all means, go right ahead.
Well, we got a couple of people watching, so we at least know. Yeah, we're live on Facebook and YouTube. We're supposed to be anyway. All right, so let me get the little bit of housekeeping out of the way. I'd like to remind everybody. Here's the way that this works. We welcome all commentary, whether you agree with anything that is said on the show or not. We want to hear commentary from all sides. Only two basic rules, because we don't really moderate the commentary, and it's got to be something egregious before we'll ban you from being able to comment. So the two rules are pretty simple. One, don't be vulgar. Look, we're all adults. We cuss every now and then. That's fine. Just don't be vulgar. And number two, no obvious trolling. Again, we encourage disagreement. We encourage agreement if you happen to agree with anything that's said. But just don't troll and just don't be vulgar. Other than that, there aren't too many other rules. So I will turn it over to you, Mr. Lowrie and Mr. Josh Goins.
All righty. Well, I was sharing out to a couple of pages, and if any of you would like to share out, I mean, hey, we're getting some reach. These last few shows we've done, there's been quite a bit of activity on it, and you're kind of over the target when the people who are against you or the people that are detractors are talking about you and their shows, their podcasts, and putting information out about you. So
Yeah,
we
very
definitely going
bad
to,
information.
yeah, not even quoting us
Hey,
correctly. I mean, this is a live show and recorded, and they're misquoting what we're saying in this show already.
Oh, I was talking about the comment on another page. Rex, that vulgar statement, you would have been real quick to put this one out. So, yeah, I think that whole they're not getting no traction thing, I don't know, brother. We might have threw it in 4-wheel drive now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, the bottom line is while this is a live show, the number of people that watch the live show is not a reflection of the number of people that see, the content later on or watch it later on. There's some people that won't watch it live because they're afraid somebody might see they're watching, or then, whatever. But there's other short clips that we're putting out there as well. And so the last show we I think we covered briefly early 60s up 70s and into 80s, and what we're trying to kind of do is historically cover some of the significant things to that people may not have known, and you're not going to hear it in a lot of the other waterfowl management. We covered a specific Sports Afield article from 1971, which talked about the big squabble over Canada geese, and how they were being short stopping, and the wildlife managers from Louisiana and Texas joined together, flew up to literally find the geese at the direction. And what did they find? They found they were being short stopped. It's not some conspiracy theory thing. We've been articulating saying that waterfowl management has failed us. I mean, I stand by that. I mean, Josh, do you stand by that?
I stand by that. I mean, have they done some good things over the past? Yeah. But, I mean, just like we was talking about the other day on a Zoom call. You got a person that originally was on the fence against us, and he's openly. I about fell out of my chair whenever he said waterfowl management on the federal level and state level has failed us. And I mean, everyone sees it. Even the guys that are against us are saying it, but they're saying it
Yeah.
about other things.
Well, and I think a large portion of people, even the people who are against us, I think they would even agree, and we talked about this in the last show, that there is a disproportionate amount of money being spent that on waterfowl that's not being spent on the breeding grounds. And, all this fundraising and all this stuff going on is supposed to be about, breeding grounds. We're supposed to be making more ducks and doing everything we can because it's all about the breeding grounds. If we don't do anything there, but yet there's a problem with the quantity of money that's being spent in the breeding grounds and somewhere else. When you're talking, what was the number? 400 something $million collected, and only 24 to 26 million of that dollars were going to Canada. That that's a problem.
Duke, the past couple of days I've been going through tons of old videos and advertisements and different things to get some stuff together for the show. Man, every video that, even stretching back as far back into the 80s and 90s, that I could get of these biologists for DU and stuff, they're steadily saying, oh, the money's got to go to the breeding grounds. The money's got to go to the breeding grounds. We got to save the ducks. I think I sent you that wanted poster that was in a magazine from the 1970s. And it was a really cool thing, but they're pointing out that we have to raise money for the breeding grounds, but yet how much money went there, Duke? Not
not
very
not
much.
not near enough. And and getting back to those people that are taking shots at us and detracting us. I mean, no, I'm not no waterfowl biologist, and I know that you're not as well either. But it's funny how all the people that are taking shots at us, they all have a hidden agenda or they have a monetary interest. It's funny
Yeah.
how that distinguishes what side of the fence you are on this debate. And in a future show, we're going to delve deep into the people that are attacking us and what their why is. We're going to show you that. I mean, I don't make no money off of doing this. I mean, it's gotten me nothing but grief ever since I went down this road. And I know, isn't that the case with you too, Josh?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know one day it'll all pay off. So that's why I continue on. But other than that, yeah, it's those guys literally try to make your life a living hell.
Yeah, so it's nothing new. I mean, it's actually simply a repeat. What's happening now today as a result of us doing this show, and the people attacking us, both professionally and unprofessionally, because it's both ways. I mean, it comes with the territory. It ain't like I've got a sorry old junky boat parked under my garage and people are jacking with me about my boat. I mean, you know, I could let I, I could let that just roll off my chest. But it's a little worse than that. In fact, I wanted to take this a little further back. In fact, at one point, and this was at some point back. I mean, and some of these quotes about when all this started, when all this conspiracy theory stuff started, Josh. You started all this conspiracy theory stuff. You started it back in about 2000 or 2003, didn't you?
Yeah, that's what they say. That uh, I kicked off Flyway Federation in 2005, but it's so funny. The Secretary of State documents say 2019. So that was about, I don't know, a
How,
long time off.
how, how, how does it start around 2000, 2003 if none of that started until 2018? I don't know, but I guess they got to get there somehow. But interestingly, and look, I'll say one of the main critics, interesting, they actually put an informative video out together. Ducks Unlimited. They sought at some point to address things and went straight to it. So Rex, if you want to get that queued up, and look, we're all about showing you the other side of the story. So we're going to take 5 minutes of our show. We've had some people criticize us and say, "Oh, y'all don't want dissenting." I think it was somebody, was it a Heitmeyer or somebody like that, was saying, about dissenting opinions or whatever. Well, hey, we're going to play right out of the gate the dissenting opinion, and
Yeah.
right. So let's go with it.
All right,
Let's play it.
just tell me when to stop, and I'll hit the stop button or pause it if you need to. Here we go.
When hunters experience a poor waterfowl season, they want to know why. People want a simple answer, but there are many factors influencing waterfowl migration and individual hunter success. Let's set the record straight by directly addressing a few of the misconceptions currently circulating within the hunting community. The biggest misconception is that poor hunting in southern states is due to waterfowl being artificially short-stopped in northern states by flooded agricultural crops managed for waterfowl hunting. There is no credible science to support this theory. Migration is largely driven by weather, specifically ice and snow cover, that freezes water bodies and limits access to food resources. Migration is risky for waterfowl. The closer they can stay to the breeding grounds, the better their chances are for survival and successful reproduction. So, in mild winters, they will stay farther north. Furthermore, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service harvest statistics for waterfowl hunting do not support the theory that ducks are being short-stopped. While the 2018-2019 season was a tough year for many hunters at the southern end of flyways, for the 2017-2018 season, the three highest harvests were in states at the bottom of their flyways: Louisiana, California, and Texas. And Louisiana continues to have some of the highest waterfowl harvest rates per hunter year after year. Rainfall is also a major factor driving waterfowl movement within the migration. Widespread wet conditions give ducks many options to move away from hunted areas, often resulting in reduced hunter success. Another misconception is that the Migratory Bird Treaty Act has been altered to allow hunting over flooded, unharvested crops. There has been no change in the legality of hunting over flooded, harvested, or unharvested crops. These practices have always been legal. They are legitimate waterfowl management practices that have been used across the continent for decades and contribute to the health and survival of migrating waterfowl. A tremendous amount of natural wetlands habitat has been lost across the continent. Impoundments where crops can be planted and flooded are important food sources for waterfowl and only partially replace the natural foods historically available. Every year we hear the rumors of the heated ponds that DU supposedly supports. This is absurd. Ducks Unlimited does not provide funding to support practices that may be used to keep waters open. The final false narrative I will address is that federal Farm Bill programs are paying farmers to grow, leave standing, and flood crops. Nothing could be further from the truth. Farm Bill programs like the Wetlands Reserve Program take flood-prone land out of production, restoring them to natural habitats. Ducks Unlimited's wetland restoration expertise is recognized by the Natural Resources Conservation Service. As such, we work with private landowners to restore these areas, but the funding comes from the landowners and NRCS, not Ducks Unlimited. Farm Bill conservation programs help waterfowl populations remain at sustainable levels to provide hunting opportunities as waterfowl migrate south and keep them healthy on their return trip to the breeding grounds in the spring. Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi are three of the 4 states with the most acres enrolled in the Wetlands Reserve Program. Together, these states have more than 700,000 acres of land that have been protected and restored to natural wetland habitats. Finally, I would ask you, beyond the facts, Why would Ducks Unlimited do anything to alter migration or limit the success of Southern hunters who are some of our most ardent, dedicated, and numerous supporters and volunteers? Since 1937, DU has worked with state, federal, and private partners to support robust waterfowl populations that provide hunting opportunities across all landscapes. Throughout our history, DU has maintained focus on supporting healthy waterfowl populations by providing sufficient habitat across the continent. It's important to fact check what you are hearing. Waterfowl hunters are the best when it comes to supporting conservation, but false narratives harm important conservation efforts.
Let's talk about false narratives. What? So Louisiana has, between Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi, we have the largest amount of, I thought that we didn't have no good habitat, dude. So he's sitting there bragging on the habitat. There's so many things that he just said that I'm just like, hang on.
Okay, well,
Let's go.
you know,
He needs to be wearing this hat.
Okay. Well, I mean, he did say some things that I agree with, talking about Louisiana and our harvest numbers, for example. I mean, yeah, our harvest numbers per hunter really don't so much show a hit, but the thing is our quantity and number of hunters is not what it historically was. I mean, we're off by half or more. I mean, in some years. So that's not necessary, but yet he doesn't break down and say that. He doesn't talk about that. And yes, to Jacob Heitmeyer, to your comment, yeah, that was 2019. And I'm pretty confident that was a direct result to Flyway Federation jumping up and, pointing out Flyway's opinion on the issue and that there was something happening. And ironically, he talks about, in this video, facts. I mean, basically, I didn't see any facts right there. I mean, where's the studies to show that unharvested agricultural crops has or has not affected migration or done anything? Where are all the comprehensive studies? Because the people that I talk to, they say, well, they haven't. In fact, they are apologetic about it. That the fact that it hasn't been made a priority to investigate and study. But some of the information that is out there that will confirm some of this, some wildlife biologists for some reason feel intimidated to not be able to come forward, to not be able. Why is it that somebody in waterfowl management feels hesitant to go public with information? Why should they feel threatened? Should they be worried about anything? But I'm not just making that up. Let me give you an example. Cut one, Rex.
All right, let me click a screen or two here.
And before I'm accused of making this up, one simply only needs to go to that video, go down in the comments, and look right here. Here's a gentleman that says, about 5 years ago, I was voicing my concerns of different practices DU was taking part in, similar to what Flyway Federation is saying now. I would make different comments on Facebook from time to time. Then suddenly I get a phone call from a DU attorney from Missouri and essentially tried to silence me. I got pretty rude with him and told him when he could take my First Amendment right, I'd stop voicing my opinion. Never heard from him again. Josh, does that not sound familiar to you?
Well, I received numerous calls, but the one call that I vividly remember, and I don't know if it was him or it wasn't him, but he said that his name was Ed Penny from Mississippi. So I knew who he was from other friends of mine that had shared information with me. And he basically was doing the same exact thing. You got to stop talking about Ducks Unlimited online or we're going to sue you. And, I sat back for a second. I was like, man, what am I going to do? I don't want to be sued by these guys. And I was like, you know what? Sue me, because everything I'm saying is a fact. So if you take me to court, all that's going to come out is the truth. So go ahead and do it, man. And then he ended up hanging up on me. Never heard from him again. Was it exactly Ed Penny? I don't know. I know it was a Mississippi number, but it could have been someone posing as Ed Penny. But I do know that I received a phone call, and he said that his name was Ed Penny.
So you've got some guy here on this particular video that's saying that a DU attorney called and, was trying to intimidate. And I'm not going to put the words of threaten in there, but, you firsthand, you have had calls like that. Ducks Unlimited can't sue you for Facebook comments and opinions. Yeah, I would think that's right, Jacob. But I mean, look, they can certainly
they
seek to
can.
intimidate you.
Yeah, they can sue. Whether they win or not is a whole different problem. And let me remind everybody real quick that it's not whether they or not they would win the lawsuit. It's whether they can spend more money than you can to fight the lawsuit. That's the problem.
Well, gosh, we know they would relish the opportunity to do that. Anything to not spend the money in the potholes. I get it. we damn sure don't want to do that. But I mean, look,
that might take just a little bit more from the potholes. No, don't do that, please.
Hey, I got a question for you guys, if I can pose it, that kind of off of one of the quotes on the video. And this is not in our notes, so I may be catching you unprepared or whatever. But he made the statement in there, or posed the question: why would DU do something or take actions to shortstop ducks or whatever up in the Midwest, which may potentially piss off or cause a decrease in the available ducks migrating south, and thus alienate a sizable percentage of the remaining duck hunters in the U.S. So the question is, how would you answer his question that he posed? Why would DU do something like this or be a
Duke,
part of it?
You want to answer
that? You can or I can. I don't care, whichever.
Well, I'll just touch on it first. And the thing is a lot of these areas that's being built as stopover areas and carryover areas, well, all that has to be designed. And just like on that video, he said, DU does not put the money into these people's property. That's just 100% false. Well, yeah, they don't put the money there, okay? But what happens is a donor gives money to them through a trust, and then therefore they can get matching funds and put this property into something, and they get to design it. They get to help with they get benefits out of the entire thing, on top of a lot of them doing a conservation easement. But the closer you can keep them ducks to the breeding grounds, well, wouldn't you say, Duke, would mean the less that's going down to where the larger amount of hunters are going. Well, you would think that's the more that's going back to the breeding grounds, so the less work they got to do in the breeding grounds. Am I correct in that, Duke?
Yeah, well, we're going to kind of, as we go through this, I think the picture is going to be painted of why, with everything else we're going to show in the rest of this show. Because, do I think that, Ducks Unlimited set out to want to piss off all, no, I don't think that's their intent, but I think their intent at the end of the day is to protect themselves and to protect the money flow, flowing in, however they have to do that. And, the bottom line, what's false, Jacob? I don't know if you're talking about, well, I got to ignore that because I don't know if he's talking about what I'm saying now. There's probably a delay there. But they got to protect, kind of the money flow. And if, if people in Louisiana and other states are able to show that the activities mid-continent, the unharvested, or those laws that were amended was as a result of any activity of them, then that would um, directly affect them. It would hurt their income. And that's what we're saying. So they had to produce this video that we're talking about they have to fight it. They have to argue against it or whatever. But, you know, why? I mean, I think the overriding thing is they want to continue to be number one. Why did Ducks Unlimited force Delta Waterfowl to have to get in to the business of implementation? Prime example. Here's your example, Rex. Delta Waterfowl was purely just a science organization. All they cared about was doing the research. They never considered themselves an implementation organization. They would do the research and then they would publish and present what needed to be done to the implementation organizations. Ducks Unlimited was they're the primary, they were the go-to. I mean, I agree with the guy in the video. They build fishing ponds better than anybody. You can't freaking do a better job than what they do. I give them credit. But when Delta Waterfowl came to a crossroads on the predation, nest success and the amount of predators on destroying nests and stuff, and the science that they saw, they turned it over. Ducks Unlimited wouldn't have nothing to do with it. So Delta found themselves at the crossroads and said, okay, we can't allow this science to be ignored. For what? We got to do something about it. So they took off. Bam, they're an implementation organization. What do? They go to different states like Louisiana, which I was a part of this, trying to get money to be able to do it. Well, you know who fought them all the way? It was Ducks Unlimited. Why? It wasn't about the science. It was because they could take the money, they could match and make more money off of it and swirl it around, put it in the washing machine, wash it around and turn it up and turn it into more dollars. Now, I would love to see what the production of ducks from DU projects per acre in all of the acres that they claim in the breeding grounds. Let's see how productive their numbers are as opposed to, say, the numbers on acres of duck production for Delta. I don't think people will think that, that increased amount of money you can get by putting that money in the washing machine is turning out. The numbers don't add up. So that's a long way of going around saying it's about the money.
Always follow the money. Yep. Okay. All right. Didn't mean to just derail you a little bit, but that thought popped into my head when he said
no, that. It's a good point, and there's a lot more about that video. I mean, there's some of the things that he says I agree with, but I think as well too, he talks about the birds are not going to move unless there is snow cover and ice. Well, we know that there's studies of radio telemetry studies that show birds freezing to death in these cornfields. Why they froze to death and why they didn't get up and move or flee the storm. And okay, but then we're also seeing people debate and argue today that birds don't move on photo period. You've got waterfowl. A portion of waterfowl management is trying to say, but yet you've got Cohen over there talking about Halloween ducks and photo period, and that all of his science is pointing to that. Historically, you've got waterfowl management of the past hangs their hat completely. Arctic blast is why Jacob Arctic.
There again, you got, which I'm sure that we'll do a whole another podcast on this, but there again, you got DU people attacking Bradley Cohen, on that Schumer's podcast on foul weather, whatever. He's saying that's just 100% false. Ducks do not move on photo period. Why? This man is married to the director of DU over the Atlantic. I mean, why is he attacking Bradley?
Slow down. Slow down, Josh. That's for another show. And we're going to get into that. Gets into people's why and going full steam ahead of it. But the bottom line is what we're saying and the information that we're putting out in the message has to be stopped at all costs. It has to be stopped at all costs, because if we're shown to be true, it will prove and show that everything that waterfowl management has been doing has been blowing smoke up our ass. Pardon my French. And that a lot of people are going to have some serious heartburn over it. So I understand why they're fighting so tenaciously, and they're going to continue to fight all the way up to the end.
You know,
Jacob
and
Heitmeyer, these past 2 years, I mean, they had snow in New Orleans, for goodness sakes. I'm in Northwest Louisiana, and I think it was 7 straight days of snow-covered days, and the birds didn't move. I saw an image of the radio-collared mallards out of one study for those 7 days. They never freaking left from up there. So you can take this snow cover and cold front thing. Yeah, I wish we had Arctic blasts like we did I remember growing up in the 70s and 80s hunting. I remember having that. But when you have the winters that we had and these big pushes and the birds don't move from up there, I'm not there. I don't buy it anymore. That's bull crap.
I think that someone had told me not too long ago, because they was always like, oh, the river's got to totally freeze and all this crap. Well, we have videos of ducks on the Mississippi River riding huge chunks of ice this year. Okay. But not only that, I think that someone told me the Missouri River has never frozen over. So I don't understand where these guys are coming from. Like, they keep saying this shit, but none of it adds up to what they're saying.
But okay, Heitmeyer saying, and we lost all the birds in Missouri. They were not in Missouri. But Jacob, the radio collars birds, they didn't move. They didn't move. So maybe all the birds that you see, but the birds that had radio telemetry, they didn't move. So why did they move? But they didn't. Well, I mean, maybe the telemetry device froze. It limited them from being able to take off. That's what it was. All the rest of them were able to go, but because of that telemetry device, the ice weighed them down. Look at there. We're figuring out science right here live on this show. I had no idea. We need to call them and let them know. They're killing ducks with these devices.
Well, Duke, so let's get back on track here. So one thing that Rex brought up, he was asking about, all this stuff, and I mentioned something about conservation.
Wait a minute. We can't move on. Stop. Hold that thought. Ducks go to the river because it's the only open water. I mean, they were talking about that they don't pay for no heated ponds. You know what? I agree with that. They don't pay for no heated ponds. But anybody ever heard of an ice eater? And what happens if you crank a water well up in the middle of winter? And if it's froze over? I mean, I know in years past at my own farm in Northwest Louisiana, and I've had a thick layer of ice, I can crank that water well up, and guess what? I got open water coming. And if having something like an ice eater or having a well to where you can circulate the water to keep it open or whatever, if none of that actually happens, if there's no methods or ways up there to promote keeping water open, then why does anybody, when they go duck hunting, go out there and try to break the ice? Why do people do that?
Good point.
Yep.
Back on point. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I got to quit looking at Jacob. He's getting under my skin.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously.
Keep going.
So, conservation easements, Duke. So we just said, and now I was doing a lot of searching on the conservation easement stuff because we're looking into a few things and trying to file a few FOIA requests to find out. But there is a lot of fraudulent activity. And I'm not saying that this includes any organizations that we're talking about on here. I'm talking about in general across the freaking nation. And I'm talking about to the sums of billions of dollars. And the IRS is finally catching on to this stuff. And I guess other people have spoken out about it. And I don't know if all this has to do with wetlands or if it is to do with deer areas or what. But I do know all that you need to do is look up conservation easement fraud, and it will blow your mind to how many cases there are, open cases right now, and it will blow your mind to the people that have been busted so far and how much money and how the trials went and what they did with the property.
Yeah, and in regard to the easements, and it's something that we'll get into a lot deeper in a future show. But in that video, he was talking about WRPs and the number of acres, and I think he said Texas and Louisiana, or did he say Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas? I can't remember. He mentioned a couple of states.
Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi.
Yeah, but I would be more curious to be able to show the numbers of all of the monies, since we're talking about billions in fraud that you're showing here, and you're talking about on these easements that the IRS is catching up on, or somehow or another they're figuring some of this stuff out. But I would be interested to know the exact numbers on the disparity in distribution of EQIP monies across the board, because I think I know the answer already, that some states are getting billions. You heard that? What I just said, billions, while other states are only getting millions. Millions.
Yep.
Some are getting billions and some are getting only millions. Now, some people may disagree with me on that, but the numbers don't lie, and we're going to go to those numbers here real soon.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
The conservation funding, and starting it off in 1985 with the Swamp Buster Act. So why was that cause for expansion? So we know that we had a loss in breeding ducks, and they were trying to push it in the breeding grounds. But what else do you know about that expansion?
By all means, tell us.
So through 1985 on in through 1998, there was a large push with the Swamp Buster funds and conservation funds, and a ton of that money went to the true breeding grounds. And we all took advantage of the resource, and we all saw the resource skyrocket on the breeding population. You cannot deny that. The data shows it. All right. So why is it that the focus shifted from there? And where did the focus go? And why did the focus go? That's where we are right now. And that is where we get in to the late 90s and what changes happened and where those changes led to and where those changes led ducks to. Am I correct?
Yeah, I definitely, I think so. I guess this is my night to talk to Jacob Heitmeyer, whoever this cat is or whatever. Hey, Jacob, I believe that Ducks Unlimited doesn't have anything to do with the WRP property, but correct me if I'm wrong. Answer me this in the comments. But isn't your property? Is it or is it not? Does it not adjoin Duck Creek Wildlife Management Area thing? And does or does not? Do you ever do anything with Duck Creek? I mean, I might be wrong.
I think they named a special unit that they put a ton of unharvested corn in on the border of his father's property, and it's actually named Greenbrier, which is, I think, there's a church right down the road from his dad's house called Greenbrier, and his dad's company's called Greenbrier. So, but ignore
He
that
said
dude.
no. He said no.
Oh yeah. Okay.
He said
Well,
no.
that's funny
Okay.
because
Well,
I think we
we'll
personally seen it, huh, dude?
we'll go there next show
Yeah.
or whenever we get to that point. So keep going. Where I gotta quit doing it. I gotta quit doing it. I'm guilty. This is so much fun. Where are we at,
All right.
Josh? Sorry.
So, Migratory Bird Treaty Reform.
All
So,
right.
Federal
Yeah,
Registry.
I'm with us. So here's the thing. We're gonna get right here where, and this is where the meat and potatoes is. So a lot of people, I mean, we see the social media debates, and you share, like there's some jackwagon from I think Mississippi or maybe even no, he's Arkansas. He's Arkansas, arguing about there is nothing in there about uh, manipulating water levels or anything. Y'all just making that up, and there ain't nothing, and from what he saw, he's sort of kind of right. It in one part of it, it doesn't. But I think a lot of people don't understand the process and how things go in DC and rulemaking. So you got this thing called the Federal Register, and when there's proposed changes, those changes are put out a notice of what changes are going to be made. Of if they intend to make a change, they will propose the rules that they're going to change, and they put out there why they're going to change what they're going to change. And so, as you see, Rex has already pulled up the proposed rulemaking 98, 76, 86, I think is what they called it or whatever. And let me get right here. So, well, I am totally unprepared. My apologies to everybody.
Would you like for me to read that paragraph for you?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, so this is basically the second to last paragraph, first column of the page one of that proposed rulemaking. Anyway, it says the service proposes new regulatory language for accidental scattering of agricultural crops or natural vegetation incidental to hunting, normal agricultural and soil stabilization practices, baited areas, baiting, manipulation, natural vegetation, and topsoiling of seed. Proposed changes include new guidance with respect to hunting over natural vegetation that has been manipulated.
So, the thing that I was wanting to point out here was the new regulatory language for normal ag and soil stabilization. Previously, soil stabilization was not mentioned in there. Why is it that soil stabilization previously was not in there? That's the first point. Second point, and I think you were going to page 2 in the first paragraph. Did you keep reading that?
I did not, but I will keep reading it if you need me to.
Nope, stand by.
Okay.
So again, at the end here, it talks about the service is proposing that this prohibition apply regardless of the purpose of the seeding and propose to explicitly exclude top seeding from the proposed definition of normal agriculture and soil stabilization. Talking about soil stabilization again for some reason, and they've got an exception in there about waterfowl and cranes. And they keep going. And if you go to page 4, for some reason, the way I laid this out and looking at my notes is not matching up for whatever reason.
All right. Well, we'll try to wing it. Pardon the pun.
Yeah. So on page 4, and if on the left-hand column, if you scroll down about middle of the page, Rex, keep scrolling, keep coming down where it says normal agriculture and soil stabilization practices. Right here in this portion of it, they're talking about the need for clarity. And in response, and I'll read it, in response to public concerns about the need for greater clarity and consistency when interpreting the regulation covering those agricultural practices that are and are not allowed when hunting migratory game birds, the service is proposing new regulatory language. The proposed new term to apply to all agricultural activities is normal agriculture and soil stabilization practices. So they're acknowledging these weren't terms, this stuff wasn't in there before. This is new stuff that they're putting in there, and it's the new way they're going to describe it. But you hear frequently, and you heard that guy say in that video earlier, nothing was changed. Everything's the same. Nothing's changed. And you frequently hear this in debates on social media. The pro people, the people who have an interest in, the resource, they always say it's the same as it always been. It's never ever changed. Well,
What is soil stabilization, Duke?
yeah, what is soil
Can you answer that
stabilization?
one?
Well, I can answer it. I know what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be about your planting a crop on there to prevent your soil from eroding and running off and into the rivers or whatever. But hell, that's what we need down here in the Gulf to make us a little bit more habitat. But hey, I get it. So the new term, normal agricultural soil stabilization. This replaces normal ag planting and harvesting for waterfowl hunting and bona fide agriculture operations. See, second column, the baiting in the second column down in the right, baiting. The service is proposing to add a new definition for baiting to the meaning of terms section of the regulation. The new term baiting will be defined as the direct or indirect placing, exposing, depositing, distributing, or scattering other than by controlling flooding or water levels. Now, I'm just wondering, can anybody show me prior to this where it says other than, in regards to baiting, where it says other than by controlling flooding or water levels? Was it
In
because was it previously anywhere, Josh?
No, not that I could find, brother. And there, I think as you go on, you'll notice they say it a couple more times to make it very clear. Oh, it's if you manipulate it by flooding, it's not going to be you're not going to be baiting. Well, why did they have to say that if it was already legal to do?
Jacob, why are you out? Y'all say that it's always been that way. It's always, and there was no change. And I mean, I agree with what y'all say when y'all say that it's perfectly legal today. I don't know why y'all say that we say it's not legal today. We acknowledge that it is. Y'all all got the stuff changed. But the fact of the matter is right here, they said in black and white, and you could say documents from 26 years ago. Yeah, it was. This is when they were changing it. This was when they put out the initial saying of what their intent was to change. They're saying right here, other than by controlling flooding or water levels. It's italicized. This was their intent to change it. It was new. It wasn't written anywhere before. Now, it did say that it was legal to hunt over flooded, unharvested fields, but show me anywhere where it distinguishes between controlling flooding or naturally flooding or pumped, or show me where it expands on the definition of flooding. It doesn't. It's nowhere. You can't produce it. The same as I can't produce that it says anywhere that you can't control, pump, or whatever. And that's the whole point we're going through all of this, because the folks on my side of the fence, we're arguing one side of this thing, saying that it wasn't legal. You guys are saying that it was legal. Well, the truth of the matter is it may be that both sides are right. And why is it that both sides are right? Both sides are possibly right because different enforcement was and interpretation was around the country. Different agencies interpreted and enforced in different ways. There wasn't consistency. And that is
But
one of the
yet it's
reasons.
not supposed to be, because it's a federal law.
That's right. That's right. So either the old regs didn't say anywhere other than by controlling flooding of water levels. And I challenge anybody to produce it where it said it before this right here. And this is what they're saying their intent is.
I've still got to go back to the point that I am just amazed that, let me put this the right way, that going out and, let's just say, buying sack corn or buying corn by the truckload and spreading it out is illegal, but flooding a whole cornfield is perfectly legal. I just,
Thank you.
that's
Thank you,
amazing
Rex.
to me.
Thank
And
you.
look, I'm not arguing or advocating for or against baiting. There's two sides to that coin. Whether it's ducks, deer, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But it's still amazing to me, and I don't know, hypocritical, ironical, anyway, that you can do that. I just don't get it. But anyway, go ahead, dude.
So I'm going to finish reading this last part. It says the definition differs from the language in the hunting methods sections of the current regulations only in that it is shorter and more concise. The current wording, shelled, shucked, unshucked corn, wheat, or other grain, salt, or other feed, will become salt, grain, and other feed. In addition, the language in the current regulations so as to constitute such a bird's a lure, attractant, or enticement to is the proposed to be shortened by elimination of the word enticement. Finally, the proposed definition clarifies that the controlling of flooding and water levels does not constitute baiting. Finally, the proposed definition clarifies that the controlling of flooding and water levels does not constitute baiting. That sounds like it wasn't clear that there was debate or dispute.
I would definitely say so. If it says finally the
I,
proposed definition.
I know that there are some detractors in the comments that don't agree with us and argue with us. Do y'all not agree that wording, finally, the proposed definition clarifies? Clarifies. What does clarify mean? Clarify means that something's not clear. It's not clear, that there's a dispute. I mean, I'm dying to know what their interpretation of that means. Do they think clarify means something different regarding controlling of flooding and water levels and baiting?
Oh, but dude,
Rex?
it doesn't.
I
It
would think
doesn't
so.
matter. This is 28 years ago. It doesn't matter.
Right.
The law doesn't matter 28 years ago, or the proposed law doesn't matter 28 years ago, apparently, according to Jacob.
Okay. Page 5, third column. And look, I appreciate Jacob commenting, but I want, and I shouldn't have went there on the property thing. I shouldn't have went there, but anyway. Page
Third
5,
column.
third column. Yeah. In this part, you've actually got the rulemaking itself. And it talks about in here, soil stabilization is, recognized as a normal agricultural practice. And soil stabilization is recognized as a normal agricultural practice. And I think it's the section H and I of this thing, it again states in here, other than controlling or flooding water levels.
That could
You see,
serve as a lure or attraction for such birds to or on over areas where hunters are attempting to take them. I just
Yeah,
wanted to finish that sentence out for you, where it is specifically saying it again, clarifying. Oh, you got to make sure to put that in there.
but that was not in there prior to this. It was
No, it wasn't.
why are they having to put it in there? If it was always legal and it was always never any question and there's no dispute whatsoever, why were they in putting it in, and why were they using the terms clarification? Uh,
Duke, if you look up any, I mean, even some of Larry Reynolds' studies, if you look up any studies, even to do with moist soil, with rice, with anything, okay, whenever they are dealing with putting water on it, their exact verbiage that these biologists use, that United States Fish and Wildlife Service, Ducks Unlimited themselves, Delta Waterfowl, any biologist that I've ever read says that they are manipulating water levels. Okay, that's stretching all the way back. So we know that. So they considered it manipulation somehow at one point for them to say that they are manipulating water levels. All right. And then right here, it's clarifying that's no longer going to be manipulation. That's no longer going to be baiting. So this is the third time now that they've said it in 2 pages.
and if you go to page 6, Rex, and I think it's
Mhm.
I2, and I'm trying to think here, I can't remember exactly why I marked this off here, but I'll read it. The taking of all migratory game birds, this is in the hunting methods section. The taking of all migratory game birds on or over standing crops, flooded standing crops, including aquatics, flooded, harvested croplands, grain, crops properly shocked on the field were grown or grains found scattered solely as the result of a normal agricultural and soil stabilization practice. There again was a change with the agriculture and normal soil stabilization practice. They added those terms in there again, and we're going to get to here in a little bit as to why they did that.
I know why you flagged this page, Duke. Look at that very last thing where it talks about the taking of all migratory game birds, a blind or other place of concealment camouflage with natural vegetation. Because in here, I think that you skipped over it, but in here, it talked about how mobilizing into a blind or exiting a blind or using certain crops or things for your blind was no longer going to be considered baiting. So that's why you was pointing this out.
Right. So this was the proposed rulemaking, and we just showed you in the proposed rulemaking, they were changing the terms and definitions, the terms of baiting, and they were adding, we showed you where they were adding, flooding, controlling the water levels. They were delineating, and they used the word clarity, that it wasn't clear. So it's not us just making that crap up. So when you hear people saying that it's always been that way, it's not even a dispute. We just showed you they use the word clarity, not us. Them. So Rex, let's go to the next
Yeah.
one. And moving along, now we're going to move to the final rule. So in the process of when they propose the rule, they put it out for comment. Everybody weighs in on it and gives their 2 cents and their opinion, and then they put out the final rule. And that's where we're at now, is going through the final rule. You would think that the final rule would say exactly what was said in the proposed rule. But guess what? It doesn't. It doesn't say exactly that. So when you think back about that video, that nothing changed, well, y'all just saw the proposed and the why they were doing it, and you saw the language that they were talking about, their definitions again, and that they were changing to use the terminology on agricultural practice and soil stabilization, you saw that, but again, nothing has changed. So we're going to jump to where we're at. Page 2, second column. The proposed rule addressed 2 current exemptions allowing migratory game bird hunting over agricultural lands, and using the words normal ag and soil stabilization. That's kind of what they were saying in here. In this part, I'm stumbling a little bit. Blah, 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 blah.
I'm trying to catch up to you to make sure I'm on the right page and area.
Well, I keep confusing myself because I try to look at what you've got on the screen and I can't read it, and I don't have it up, and I'm trying to keep timed right with the notes, and I am just totally butchering it. My apologies to folks. I am a rank amateur.
That's okay. Hey, this is nobody has claimed that this is a professional show. So, all right. So this is page 2 of that cut with the final rule. I'm on page 2 of that PDF. Third column 3, the proposed rule. Is that agricultural terms and definitions, maybe?
Yeah. The application of the strict liability standard on page 2. That's where I'm at.
Okay.
So
okay, gotcha.
The proposed rule was published before passage of new public law that affects migratory law of public law 105-312 replaced the strict liability standard with a new standard. This law now prohibits the taking of migratory game birds by the aid of baiting or on or over any baited area if the person knows or reasonably should know that the area is a baited area. So we're getting into, this was one of the things, with the strict liability and the scienter, and we're going to go in depth on this. And I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm on one side of the fence than the other on one day. I mean, because I do know wardens can be overzealous, but then I also do know that people sometimes don't put the resource above their self-interest. If they did,
take advantage of the law.
They take advantage of the law. And if they didn't, if nobody did that, we wouldn't be here doing this show talking about this crap right here, right now at all. Wouldn't be any need for it.
Exactly right.
So, why can I not find what I'm looking for? Third column.
Let's see. Page 2, third column. Proposed rule change. Anyway.
Yeah, at the top, item 3, agricultural terms and definitions. The proposed rule addresses 2 current exemptions allowing migratory game bird hunting over agricultural lands. The current exemptions are separated into those practices allowed for hunting waterfowl and those allowed for hunting other migratory game birds such as dove. We propose to consolidate the allowed practices into one term: normal agriculture and soil stabilization practices. So they're acknowledging, they're changing the terms and combining, and again, previously that soil stabilization practice thing, that wasn't in there. I mean, you go back and look and you can't.
That was actually right there. It would have said in the previous, it would have said bona fide agricultural practice. And whenever you look up USDA or any other, bona fide means the crop was planted with the intent to harvest and sell for profit. But it was changed to this agricultural and soil stabilization practice. Go ahead.
And if you jump to the bottom of this thing and you get down here and you see some of these, you may not can read it on there, but it's italicized, and it says in here the term normal soil stabilization practice includes plantings made solely for agricultural soil erosion control or post-mining land reclamation. Finally, the hunting of migratory game birds, except waterfowl, coots, and cranes, is allowed over normal agriculture operation. also defined in this rule. So, a normal agricultural practice or operation would be that, let's say you plant a crop of corn and you get what Mother Nature kicks in, and the Mississippi comes out of its blanks and floods corn, wheat, whatever. Guess what? You can go hunt it. It's all good. And you know what? It's always been like that. I agree with the naysayers. It's always been like that. But what it has not always been is that you can go dam it up to flood it intentionally, or you can click on a water well and to flood it. But I digress. You know what?
No.
It might have been legal for them in their area and with their wildlife managers. And why would I say that? Because some wildlife managers and others, they didn't apply the rules equally. Some people were able to get away with some things that other people weren't able to get away with.
Yeah, but what gets me, Duke, is just like our buddies from Illinois and even some from Missouri, whenever we ask them straight up, we're like, okay, so when was the first time, other than on a refuge or a conservation area? Because we all have already established that was done to provide hunting opportunities to hunters in those areas. We know that they did that. It was done on crop share programs, and there's lots of documentation on it. But we ask them, when did you see this practice start happening on private land, not on these areas that are controlled? Every single person said 2001 to 2003. That's the first time. And they were like, we didn't know that was legal because no one ever did that before. If they would have known that they were able to do that before, they would have shortstopped the damn ducks back whenever they shortstopped the Canadas. And that's, you know that as well as I do.
Yeah. So if you jump to page 6 on this, we'll jump through all the other stuff because basically it's just reiterating what we're saying here. And on page 6, on the third column to the right, and we'll jump down under what hunting methods are illegal, ? And you jump down there. Let's see here. I think it's I. Actually, there's two I's. One, two, three. Anyway, the third column under what hunting methods are illegal: standing crops or flooded standing crops, including aquatic, standing, flooded, or manipulated natural vegetation, flooded, harvested croplands or lands, or where areas where seeds or grains have been scattered solely as a result of a normal agricultural planting, harvesting, post-harvest manipulation, or normal soil stabilization practice. I mean, they added it in there. But they didn't say, well, Bert, maybe so, but I think that there's people from your region that would argue that that's not the case. And in fact, I've heard it out of my own ears from people from your region. But again, you may have been doing it, but not everywhere was doing it, and not everywhere had an application of the law in the same way. And if your contention is that it's always been that way and that's been fine, why is it that they have to use the word or term clarity? Why did they, when they started it? Again, I challenge you to tell me, why did they feel like it wasn't clear? I mean, we weren't around saying this back then. Why would they out of the blue say that it wasn't clear and it needed to be cleared up and it needed to be put in here specifically, that language? I mean, if it was normal and it was all good, there shouldn't have had to done anything.
I mean, it's pretty obvious to say that if there was a couple of clubs back then doing it, they had a baiting permit to do it, because if you go right back to President Roosevelt, he said that there were a limited number of baiting permits out there. So we do know that there was private clubs that was adjacent to refuges and conservation areas. And those places actually were doing it on small amounts. All right. We're not denying that. We know that all that happened. So, A, they either had a permit, B, they didn't know that it was illegal and they were doing it and the game wardens of their state was allowing them to, or C, they just didn't care and they knew that they were baiting. One of the three. But the whole point is it was not done on this large scale that we have now. That is a massive problem in
Yeah,
all these birds distribution.
yeah, and this debate on whether it was or whether it was not legal before, that's not the issue today. It's really not the issue. It is a distraction from the people that want to continue the practice and that don't recognize that the activity is and at scale now is having an effect on the migration. They don't want to acknowledge that because they don't want anything to change. They don't want fair chase. But the bottom line is that, you know, from your perspective, it's always been that way, and it was perfectly legal. Well, you know what? From your viewpoint, I can see this, how you would believe that and how you think it's right. You know, from my viewpoint, I couldn't do that here. I could not do it. And waterfowl tomorrow. I mean, there's a picture of a cornfield that was in Ringgold, Louisiana, flooded corn. Guess
Didn't
what?
you actually work with his with that family's uh
Well,
grandson or something?
actually, I did work with one of the McCoys. I did, but actually, there's another mutual friend of ours that he actually worked with that family, and he got the full accounting on the story of it. So um, that's the case. Well, let's keep moving on here because we got a lot more to get into this thing. But you know, the strict liability and the scienter requirement. You know, Josh, here's the other part of this deal. That wasn't that wasn't all just done in '98. You know, with this farm bill, that or with this, that wasn't when it occurred. They actually had brought in the scienter deal before then in '86, and the what was it, the Emergency Wetlands Resource Act of '86, but they didn't put
Mm.
it to baiting. It was just that in this go around, they changed it from strict liability to the scienter. And now there's a debate that people can have. You know, was there overzealous agents? Have some agents, I mean, took advantage of it, and you know, did he write somebody a ticket because they were in a baited field and they legitimately, honestly didn't know? Yeah, they even admit that that happened, and the way that the law read, that you know, that was the case. You were guilty. There's no way out of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, anyway, so you had clarification in '98, and then also the '98 changes, you know, incorporated as well in the U.S. Russia treaty, you know, and there were a few other things. So, going to jump way ahead, and you know, the bottom line is politics was heavily involved in all of this, and that is what motivated the changes that we saw, you know, and the clarity that needed to happen, you know, because admittedly, you had politicians from Louisiana, you had politicians from Illinois, you had politicians from Minnesota, Arkansas, South Carolina, that during the time, Rex, can you believe this? Politicians were getting baiting violations. They were getting busted across the country. In
Imagine
fact,
that.
you had
Duke,
one,
if you go ahead.
I was going to say, you had one famous senator from Texas that got caught up on a baiting gig in I think it was Virginia. Is kind of like one of the deals that got this thing kicked off.
Yeah.
And
It if you go read Sitting Ducks, Duke, from 1997, so the United States Fish and Wildlife Service agents that were against these law changes, it was a lot of them. They were gag ordered to the point by their supervisors, and those supervisors were being
Well,
pushed in that direction by politicians.
that's exactly right.
And
Well, how do we know that, Josh? We know that because we've got the Sitting Ducks paper right here in front of us ready to go. And we're going to go through that. A lot of you may not have ever heard of Sitting Ducks, but Josh, who is Sitting Ducks? Who is Peer? Why is Peer, PEER, what's the deal with this group? How did they come to be?
so Peer is a um, whistleblowing organization for, I guess, civil workers or state, federal workers. If they feel like their job is being threatened and they need someone to speak on their behalf, they can contact Peer, and Peer will keep them anonymous, and they'll build a coalition of other employees that feel the same way, and then they will speak on their behalf to whatever legislation or whatever changes are being made that they are against, or within the department or whatever. And Peer spoke on behalf of, I don't even, I can't remember how many agents it was, but it was a large amount of agents that spoke out against this.
So I don't know why I put what I put in the notes. So this Peer article is all of the people that didn't agree with some of the changes that were coming down the pipe. They knew what the intent was. They knew the why, and this was their way of having their voice heard, without retribution. Because as we will show here in a minute, as we go through this, they were gagged and they were threatened. And it's not, again, us just making this up. It's actually documented. It's not a phony thing. And today you still have the same thing happening. You have, people in waterfowl management that are basically gagged, and they're fearful to come public and to say, no, this isn't right, or to toe the line. So page 3, first paragraph. Well, I got to get my bearings here straight. It's horrible being somewhat unprepared. Where is that? I highlighted the quote, first paragraph, the retreat. I don't see it.
I'm on the actual page 3 of the PDF. And according to their numbering, page 3. Hold on. Let me get it back just a second.
I'll start at what I said in the thing. The Peer White Paper documents the retreat of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service from strong and uncompromised enforcement of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. According to its own enforcement personnel, the agency is bowing to intense political pressure to allow unethical hunting techniques, principally baiting, which will facilitate detrimental overharvesting of game birds. Now, people today would say, oh, or the detractors of what we're saying, they would say, oh, well, we've not had problems with overharvesting. In fact, everything is fine. We're harvesting doesn't have any effect. Again, I would go back to, and they say that Louisiana, you're still harvesting great. Your numbers are still great. Well, yeah, we've lost over 50% of our hunters in Louisiana. The number's actually greater than 50%. I'm being conservative. And so if you take half of the hunters out of Louisiana, which makes up probably of all the states, the largest majority of hunters in the Mississippi Flyway, I mean, I'm guessing harvest probably would look pretty good per hunter
Yeah.
across the spectrum. Those
Yeah,
numbers would look good.
remember the other day there was someone that had brought that same argument up to you, and whenever you dropped the graph of the hunter loss, he disappeared. No, nothing to say about that. It didn't matter that we've lost 80 to 90,000 hunters. He just wanted to point out that the ducks killed per hunter still to this day was good. Well, guess what? Somehow harvest or something or mismanagement has went terribly wrong, because I mean, look at this year. We're dropping down to a 9-day till season. They're really worried about the mallards. We have serious problems, and everything within this document predicted it, just like Yancey and all them predicted it back in the day. But no one wants to listen to anything from the past.
So moving along to all these, wildlife and fisheries people, these U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service people, they can't publicly say all of this. They have to do it through some organization that will voice, collectively air what they believe out, because they can't do it for fear of retaliation and being threatened. But in the second paragraph here, baiting is the legal practice of using feed to attract game. It is a highly effective way to lure birds within a hunter's range of fire, because feeding birds conditions them to return to a specific area time and time again. In this regard, a baited area is essentially no different than a bird feeder. Law enforcement officers and ethical hunters agree that this activity, which has been outlawed since 1935, violates the tradition and sporting heritage of hunting. Violates the tradition and sporting heritage.
Hey, pause right there for a second. So I want to go down this rabbit hole for just a second. Now, I'm not arguing for or against hunting or baiting. Look, if I go deer hunting, fact of the matter is sometimes I'm putting out corn. It's like candy to them. Okay. And corn has a higher nutritional content for ducks, absolutely, than it does for deer. But how do people define the tradition and sporting heritage of hunting? Because I'm pretty sure our ancestors, when they were hunting to actually eat or starve, used whatever means at their disposal, including attractants for game.
I, you, Rex, you took the words out of my mouth. I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about it. Now I want y'all to close your eyes. Y'all close your eyes and y'all think. Y'all are somewhere along the Mississippi, somewhere in Missouri, and you're with Sacagawea. Okay, you with me? You're with Sacagawea. Y'all just paddled up the Mississippi in your canoe. You pulled out on the bank of the Missouri side, and there ain't no duck blinds there no more because they got rid of them because they don't want to pressure the birds so they can go to the cornfields over there. But anyway, you step out of your canoe. They ain't got no pirogues, and Sacagawea says, "Hey, we need to plant some corn on this bank here and have us a good duck hunt. Hey, go get that stick and shovel some dirt on the edge right here. And then, I'll go get a watermelon rind and we'll start toting water and we'll flood it with water." I mean, I can just see it. I can see it. Can't y'all? I
So
mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
that where that changed, Rex. So it changed whenever market hunting. You're exactly right. Back then, they were doing it to survive. They were killing birds in massive numbers and doing it by any means necessary. I mean, we read the Missouri versus Holland. They didn't want to be shut down by how they were hunting, but there was something that came into place called the Migratory Bird Treaty. And whenever that happened, it shut all that down. And everyone had to hunt by fair chase. And it became more of a sport at that point instead of market hunting.
I get it, and I'm being a little facetious here, so forgive me tonight. But to me, if we're going to talk about traditional fair chase, it needs to go back to no guns, go out in the field and try to pounce on the ducks and grab them with your bare hands. That to me is tradition and sporting heritage, not the fact that we have shotguns that can kill them at 75 and 80 yards. But I digress.
Well, Rex, when you go bass fishing on Toledo and you got that big bass, he's sitting over there on that bed, why don't you just troll, about 50 foot to the left of him? You drop that wire in the water, then troll 50 foot over to the right of him, and then hook that battery up and pop him.
Yeah, or I could just do the old rotary dial phone, or just take some M80s and drop out there. Look, I agree with you 100%. It's like when people talk about the tradition and sporting of bass fishing, and I'll get off my soapbox in about 30 seconds, so bear with me. 100 years ago, 80% of the lakes that we bass fish or crappie fish or whatever, or duck hunt, didn't exist in the U.S. They did not exist at all. So don't talk to me about tradition and all that. I'm all for my 200 plus horsepower 20-foot boat because I am too lazy to paddle a canoe anymore. I am too old for that. I like my boat. But when we talk about that, let's get off our high horse and act like our forefathers' forefathers were actually driving around in ATVs using tractors with centrifugal pumps to flood cornfields so we could shoot them with $1,000 shotguns at 80 yards. I mean, come on. All right. But I digress. Sorry, guys.
Good job, I guess.
Sorry.
I don't know. I can't get poor Sacagawea having to plant all that damn corn.
You've painted a middle picture that'll be with me for a while.
I just can't get it. I mean, where'd she get that corn from? I don't get it.
The watermelon rind she was using to flood the field. But anyway, all right. Sorry, guys.
So, second column, still on page 5, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service special agents empowered to strictly enforce hunting laws fear proposed changes that would hinder prosecution of hunters who shoot birds over bait and, as a result, drastically reduce game bird populations, undermining the intent of species protection laws. The officers questioned the motives of those, and particularly their own agency, in favor of allowing the use of bait to hunt game birds. Like most Americans, the agents disagree with any government policy that promotes the use and abuse of migratory birds in a manner that has been banned for more than 6 decades. Whew. So these cats were obviously these cats were obviously letting people know how they felt silently, as best they could. Lost my place again.
Oh, sorry. I derailed
okay.
you.
Yeah, I've totally lost. I know where it's at. Okay, here we go. The powerful sportsman lobby and its state and federal political supporters are pressuring the agency to change existing standards. Powerful sportsman lobby, who could that be? And its state and federal political supporters are pressuring the agency. So you've got politics and you've got powerful sportsmen's lobby that are pushing to change existing standards. State game agencies and hunter constituency groups want to relax baiting regulations that they claim hurt the average hunter. So it was all about the average hunter. So the average hunter was getting put into a bind, and that's why they needed to make these changes. I think a lot of people in 400 something public land blinds that have been squeezed away from folks might have a different opinion as to why things are done, and that they're not about the average hunter. The proposed changes discriminate in favor of commercial interests namely private hunt clubs which cater to wealthy and influential members who want to enhance their hunting through baiting. Should I keep going? I mean, it's almost like when they wrote this years ago, they were writing it today. Exactly who's the winners and the losers.
Yeah, and it's so funny that just like they're saying here, we're doing it in favor of the average hunter because they're being hurt. Well, look at what's happening in Illinois right now. The average hunter, so Illinois said, okay, no more unharvested agricultural crops on any of our state lands at all. Okay. And our refuges. No, we're not going to spend any more money doing that. We're going to go to a more natural moist soil. I think they've only got a couple of areas that's going to have it this year. But yet, every private club is now doubling down. And guess where all their birds are going to be? And they all, if it didn't work, then why would all the guys in Illinois, friends of ours and everything, be telling us at the huge outcry that's going out? They're all saying, we're done for. Every bird that is going to come here is going to be on the private land. If it didn't work, why would they be saying that?
And finishing up this part, and they go on to say, since birds would no doubt flock to the clubs, many acres of prime, heavily manipulated habitat, the common hunter would no longer have an equal chance to compete for limited waterfowl resources. And that is absolutely the case of what's happening today. Congressional legislation has also been introduced to relax regulations, making it more difficult to punish hunting violators who fail to understand baiting laws. Most offenders are indeed victims of ignorance. They fail to learn the cardinal rule of federal game laws. The hunter is always responsible when it comes to hunting over baited areas. I mean, it's every hunter's ethical responsibility to make the determination of whether they're hunting over a baited field or not. That was the way it was when I first started. It was your responsibility, but nobody. There's no accountability now. There's none.
Yep.
So anyway, I think that is all on that page. Let's roll to the sixth page and first column, third paragraph. On the issue of hunter equity, they go on to say, this fellow by the name of Robert, he's the assistant director named Robert Streeter. And he says, on the issue of hunter equity, Streeter warned that liberalization could promote and encourage an inequity whereby those with the greatest financial motivation and resources, such as hunting clubs and commercial hunting operations, would benefit the most at the expense of the wildlife resource and the common hunter. In terms of the impact on the sport of hunting, Streeter said, the loosening of regulations amounted, quote, to the elimination of the traditional fair chase hunting standard, providing the anti-hunting segment of society a new platform to pursue for closure of all hunting activities. But the elimination of traditional fair chase, I know you don't like that, Rex, but that's what has been happening. And it was, the original question. It's about the money. It's all about the money. And I heard somebody say in regards to this, they said, and I appreciate their honesty on the subject, but they said, look, they're got a big club up there. And they said, look, money talks and bullshit walks. And the bottom line is we got the money. And you know what? He's right. So it's either waterfowl hunting is to be as it is, that it's only going to be the rich man's sport. And I don't know, can you call it sport anymore after that? And, regular people, they're just out of the game.
You're exactly right.
So,
Well, and y'all probably don't want to broach on this subject, certainly not tonight, so I don't want to derail you at all, but that is one of the reasons for the precipitous decline in the number of hunters in the U.S. in the last 50 years, much more so than fishing. At least with fishing, we still got a bunch of these public lakes around here that we can go fish at. And hunting, you're losing rapidly areas to hunt, and it becomes a problem
You're
unless you
you're
have money.
exact you're exactly right, Rex. I can't tell you how many guys that I've talked to, especially older gentlemen that saw, a lot of the younger guys are still going because they never saw the skies full like we did, and guys older than me, and a lot of those guys just have fully given it up. And guess what? They bought them a $60,000-$70,000 bass boat or an offshore boat, and they're going offshore or they're going to the lake to fish because they can do something that they enjoy themselves, that they don't feel like someone can come up and take from them. And I get it, because one of my favorite pastimes to do now is go offshore fishing. Because believe me, whenever I'm in a duck blind, I just get frustrated because it's not that I'm not killing, it's that I'm not seeing. I remember watching these birds, and that's what drives me insane.
so listen to the rest of this story, and this one you're not going to believe. So this peer, the article keeps going, and it said, given the agency's new position, it is not surprising. Well, let me back up a step. Now, just 1 year later, there seems to be widespread complicity and cooperation on the part of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to deregulate anti-baiting regulations. Given the agency's new position, it is not surprising that in January of '98, a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service employee was caught illegally hunting swan at a Virginia farm that had been the scene of repeated illegal baiting activity. The violator, Mr. Ronald Kokel, a wildlife biologist with the Office of Migratory Bird Management, was deeply involved in formulating the agency's proposed rule change regarding baiting. In the opinion of U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service special agents, both the agency's proposed regulatory changes and pending legislation endorse politics at the expense of conservation, riddling the regulations with loopholes that will render them unenforceable. By eliminating proven deterrents, baiting relaxation would increase enforcement costs at the expense of the too few officers in the field. The net effect would be a drastic reduction in game bird populations. So you actually had the guy that was writing some of this stuff. He actually was just right at the same time he's writing all this stuff, killing a swan, killing swan on a baited place in Virginia. I mean, ironically, again, that senator from Texas and had a place in Virginia, and they go on to talk about that here in just a minute.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many politicians that this talks about that were busted around the same time period, and because of how the law was set up before. And I mean, they were looking at some serious charges, and it would have basically derailed their careers or whatever. But if you get this law change to where that's no longer a thing, well, guess what? It's they no longer are liable for this.
We're going to skip that part. Try to hurry up and get through this. Jump to page 8. So, let me go back 100 years. So, this particular page, and I want to focus on this one because this one goes back to when we were covering, the talking about how in the proposed language and in the final language and what happened before in that dispute. But again, here they talk about there is a difference between an illegally baited field and one which has legally been prepared with seeds for a legitimate purpose, such as farming or wildlife management. they acknowledge a distinction between, activities to support wildlife management. Maybe the people that say that it was always legal to flood and everywhere, maybe they'll say it in here. Maybe we will see that it's legal to flood prior or what have you. Maybe they'll say it right here. Both may contain food for birds, the difference basically being how and why it is there. Federal regulations recognize that agricultural lands afford good migratory bird hunting. We all know that. Birds are predictable and prefer farmland where crops have been harvested, providing them with preferred food. Why didn't they say birds are predictable and prefer farmland that haven't been harvested? Why didn't they say that? But they said harvesting. Oh, I know. Well, wait a minute. They're talking about farmland because you farm it to harvest it. You don't farm it to not harvest it unless you're trying to attract ducks for the purpose to
Or
kill them
lure.
or lure. Okay. It is perfectly legal, for instance, to hunt waterfowl over areas where normal crop planting and harvesting have occurred. Likewise, it is permissible to, anyway, that goes on to hunt, talking about doves and stuff. So drop down at the bottom and you see that big highlighted square, Rex.
Yeah.
And this is basically like a summation of the part that they're kind of talking about right there. And they say standing crops, legal agricultural hunting areas. They're kind of saying to you, these are the areas. Standing crops, fields of unharvested commercial crops such as wheat, corn, sorghum, or milo. I mean, I read that to be a dry field out there, right?
Yes.
Then they say flooded crops, crops that are grown, left standing, and flooded. Okay.
Okay.
Does that mean, why does it not
Intentional?
say intentionally flooding or, flooded for the purpose of hunting duck? Why does it not say that? Why does it says it in that new proposed language, but why did the language before, again here, not differentiate between flooding from a storm or flooding by a mechanical purpose? I mean, a mechanical method. Rex, you're
Well,
not a duck hunter.
I mean, I can only say follow the money, but it's kind of odd that they didn't differentiate between that.
and
I mean, so
back
go ahead.
back then, if a farmer's crop, certain areas of his crop was flooded, what would he end up having to do? He would end up having to leave it standing, left standing and flooded. So I don't know.
So the word, to me it is vague. If I was a person that was taking the position, and I'm not one of those people, but I could see where they would say, okay, it's always been legal, it was done before, but having the knowledge of all of this other stuff, I could see where they say, well, look, it was always legal because it wasn't clear. Probably enforcement agents in their area might not have enforced them mechanically flooding and pumping a crop like that. I can see where that's possible, but what I can't see is how they can't understand. They always say, you ain't been to Missouri, or you don't know what we do or whatever. And well, I mean, you've not really been here to Louisiana to see how agents enforce things here or in every other place in the world. You've not been everywhere either too. I can say that about you. How is your view the only view of the way things were? That is ludicrous. You can't say that. I think it's vague, and it's the reason they made the proposed language. In their words, they even said it to provide clarity. Clarity. They said it.
Dude, whenever that law was written, nobody in their right mind thought that someone would put that much money into planting a crop, because it is very expensive, and leave it for the birds to shoot them in the face. End of story. And I mean, you look back at, remember whenever the Delta plantation, the hurricane hit them, and it was a big lawsuit. They all got busted. And why were they busting them? Because they said, oh, all of your crop wasn't harvested, and it got manipulated by that storm, so y'all can't hunt it. And it was a big lawsuit. But every agent from Louisiana I've spoken to, all the retired ones said, dude, if you would have left a unharvested rice field, we would have busted your ass for it. They said as soon as your dog ran out in it, or you walked out in it to put decoys out or whatever, that would have been your ass. Because you remember those flower sayings that your great grandma and all of them used to have? I heard about numerous agents, and that's what they would walk around with, and they would walk and drag it in the water. And if they got ever so many pieces of rice in that thing, that was your ass. Do you remember that, dude?
Yeah, but the point is why can these guys that say it's always been that way not understand that it's possible it could have been the way where they were at, but why can they not understand that that's not the way that it was everywhere? And I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that it was I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. But again, I am allowing them to do what they want to do. They want to make the debate about, either it was or it wasn't, and not about what's happening today. And the fact is that, Louisiana is suffering, and not just Louisiana, other states are suffering as a result of, this change and this baiting. Go to cut. You're already there. Nope. Go to page 10, Rex. We're moving along here.
All right.
So on this here, they were talking about this portion. They were talking about the strict liability, and they were given some examples. Bert Steinman. So what your point? I'm not doing it. I'm not allowing myself to get off. They're giving examples, on strict liability. And I thought it was neat. The examples here, a hunter who shoots a Western kingbird, he can now say, I thought it was a dove, and he's off the hook. An oil company whose open oil pit kills geese. We didn't realize it posed a danger. Well, that's their excuse. A mining company uses cyanide leach. We never intended to kill any birds. Well, they didn't have intent. So they said they didn't have intent. How's the game warden to prove that they intended or didn't? A farmer using harmful pesticides. I couldn't help that ducks fed in the field. Well, that sounds plausible. He couldn't help. The point of all of these, there's numerous examples of how someone could, enunciate reasonable doubt or show that they didn't intend to do something, and therefore there would be nothing could be done to them. Like, let's think, wasn't there some big oil, Exxon Valdez? Oh yeah, Exxon Valdez. We didn't intend to have a shipwreck, so therefore we shouldn't be liable. Can't penalize them. I mean, we didn't kill, but how many percent of the population of waterfowl? I mean, we didn't mean to do it.
That was a big one too, man.
Like, no harm, no foul. So anyway, moving on. 11. Interestingly, I don't know if they were taking a shot here, but on page 11, look at that. Ducks not so unlimited. Were they taking a shot?
I would say so.
Now, additionally, I want to get to the point. They talk about the alluvial plain comprised nearly 24 million acres of bottomland forested wetland. 24 million acres. That's a significant number. I wonder what the total number is now when you comprise, because flooded unharvested agricultural crops and how many total acres. I wonder if you throw all that stuff in the mix, I wonder how many millions of acres we have now, since look, the cornfields and all are more duck day energy, than any of the natural stuff that all happened before. And if that's true, that it is more valuable and you get more energy use. I mean, I'm just wondering how the hell the ducks made it, even up to Sacagawea planting corns. How did they? I don't get it. I mean,
You
they
got a
talk
good
about it.
point, dude.
They talk about other people being, Roosevelt and all, the father of conservation, but damn, they hating on the Indians. Sacagawea, she's the one that saved them. I know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We'll keep going. Next page, page 12, first paragraph. Let's see here. Where am I going with this? Oh, yeah. When asked, this is talking about a guy, and they were talking about enforcement, and and start giving a lot of examples of some of the different enforcement type stuff. And this guy says, or when asked why he illegally baited, a convicted hunter replied, "You have to if you want to get ducks these days. The reason is simple: ducks are more scarce, and baiting assures kills." Reportedly told by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and groups like Ducks Unlimited that hunting is compensatory. So, and hunting has no impact. It is little wonder many conclude that cheating a little to ensure a day's kill is not really a big deal. So we're hearing nowadays a continuation of that. Now, granted, they're not using the terms of compensatory or additive, like, and there's a reason that they're using those terms, but we're hearing that harvest has no effect these days, and that it kind of doesn't matter. But yet, I scratch my head when I'm hearing this, and I think about the quantity of hunters that are off of the field, not harvesting in Louisiana. If you added all those hunters back, if the migration was actually coming to Louisiana again, and we were taking, would you still take the view as it being compensatory or additive? So if you take the hunters off of the field and the population doesn't decline, you can then say it's compensatory. That percentage of ducks that have been harvested would have still been died of natural causes or whatever. But if you still had all of that population hunting, it would be added. I think the numbers would probably be additive, and therefore the seasons would be reduced. Y'all follow me on that? Or did
I
that make
do.
any sense?
It even made sense for a guy who hasn't been duck hunting in quite a while.
That's one of those things I was talking about, dude, right there. And I've actually seen a game warden walking around with it.
Yep, they're in that picture. So I contend that with the baiting changes, it created the situation of concentrating food sources, and by doing so, you're artificially boosting survival in certain areas, and that it makes mortality look compensatory in some regions, but not others. So, yeah, you concentrate in food sources mid-continent. You take off the field, a large number of harvests, because you're taking that many more hunters out of the equation, and that would almost certainly prevent it from getting additive, but you would be able to continue to look at it as compensatory.
Yeah.
That probably just flew over a lot of people's head. Somebody's throwing stuff at a TV somewhere right now, I know. Hopefully so. So some people would say that that's hogwash, and I get that. But it makes me think as well, additionally, about specific species, because why is it specifically with the data that we see or we're seeing, and that, the species that are most susceptible to uh, flooded, unharvested agricultural crops are the ones that we see the biggest drops come into Louisiana. But the species that are not susceptible to unharvested agricultural crops, we don't really see a change in their migration to Louisiana. Why is that?
Another point to be made off of that exact thing, Duke, is the ducks that are more susceptible to it, look at their numbers in the breeding grounds. All of the data showing that the mallard population is falling. And so is harvest mattering now? I mean, there's a lot of stuff at play here, but you really got to look at all of the commercialization, and I think that it is playing a factor, and that's my opinion, but I would say that's probably your opinion too.
Yeah, so let's jump to page 19. And I was talking about a certain former Texas senator. And we talked about earlier about politics. We talked earlier about um, wildlife, people in wildlife management, being intimidated, threatened, gagged. Those all are legitimate things. That I think that they even still happen today. Um, A gram of prevention. They wrote about it here. In the fall of 87, just before opening day of waterfowl season, 2 U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service agents flying a routine early morning patrol over the eastern shore of Chesapeake Bay spotted huge piles of bait ringing upon below. They immediately suspected the local hunters were illegally trying to lure ducks into shotgun range. The area, located near Blackwater National Wildlife Refuge, ranks among the country's most desirable locations for waterfowl hunting. Just a convenient 2-hour drive from the nation's capital, private hunting clubs abound to entertain rich and powerful clients, sometimes in the zeal to maximize their harvest during a stay. Guests run afoul of game laws, usually baiting. The pond that caught the eye of the agents that day happened to be adjacent to a vacation home owned by U.S. Senator Phil Gramm. A follow-up inspection revealed clear signs of active baiting. So they set up on it, but after 4 days of undercover surveillance, no hunters showed up. Although Graham denies it, a former Interior Department Assistant Secretary submitted a sworn statement to a congressional panel in 1989 that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Director, Frank Dunkel, aware of the ongoing investigation, tipped off the senator to avoid an embarrassing situation. What's the chances of that? Okay,
Yep.
y'all got to give me more. We ain't been at it that long, but we're wrapping up. But we're wrapping up. The political fall, it kind of got out anyway, and so apparently there was some big political fallout. And after it was all said and done and the dust settled, one of the agents who was a part of it got transferred. Then apparently Senator Graham, he met with the director of U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and he complained on behalf of his neighbors, and I would assume himself and his political contributors, about the local refuge managers. He was the one that brought it to the attention of everybody on the illegal baiting in the area. Graham later admitted, telling Dunkel that people all over the country are up in arms over this guy. After the meeting, Duncan told the deputy director that the management of the Blackwater Refuge would go better if they had a change in the head of operations down there. And summarily, that guy was demoted and moved the heck out of there. So there's a right there well documented case of a waterfowl management, not being able to speak up and say, and they were went after. literally right there.
Yeah.
No, clear case of the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah. So states' rights and wrongs on page 20. Since their implementation in 1935, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act regulations have been amended 18 times, the last time 25 years ago, in an effort to make them as clear as possible to hunters and to the agents charged with enforcing the law. Based on pressure exerted by a few politically powerful hunters, a 19th set of amendments is now under consideration. The reason is simple. Hunters clamoring for more game to shoot and who want to make the hunting experience easier have set their sights on relaxing the regulations that prohibit baiting. I mean, they're calling it like it is. I put down in the notes to keep reading this. I'm not going to keep reading all of this, but this thing just pours on and on and on. It talks about 1933, a report declared Illinois the most heavily baited state in the nation. To some extent, that tradition continues, although baiting techniques are no longer as blatant or as easy to detect. The new, more sophisticated methods used by hunters essentially achieve the same purpose as dumping seeds from a sack. Today, manipulating crops, supplementing or adding seeds, and employing dubious farming practices are the norm, providing a real challenge for wildlife officers. I mean,
Yep.
what more can you say?
Exactly.
I'm not going to disagree with it. I've been on my
We
bandwagon about the about the fuzzy line between flooding corn and baiting.
One thing that we do need to do, Duke, and I'm sure Rex can, is share this entire thing for readers to go read the whole thing. So, because there is a ton of more stuff in here that we have skipped over just because it's so much information. But like I said earlier, everything that they predicted back then is currently happening right now.
Yeah, so page 23, second column, last paragraph on that page, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service caved into the threat of legislation by promising to address the baiting problem through the regulatory process. In May of 97, law enforcement officers were notified by headquarters to accept politically certain givens, including the fact that there will be a scienter standard applied to baiting. They already knew before it went through. It was already in the works. The agents were also told that other changes relating were forthcoming. So this was all in the works. They were moving at light speed, and again, this document earlier pointed to hunter lobbyist organizations. You can draw your own
Yep.
conclusions as to who they're talking about. Page 24, inputs from state agencies and sportsman group, but insists I got to find that because I got to read that. That is important right there. First column, first paragraph. On March 25th, 98, the acts fell. A week after providing, I don't remember the acronym, IAFWA, with advance notice, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service published to the Federal Register a proposed rule change. We read the proposed rule change earlier to the current Migratory Bird Treaty Act regulations. The agency's stated rationale was to provide, quote, clarity for the public and consistency and fairness in law enforcement operations. Again, we highlighted the fact that they used the term clarity earlier. We used that. Why would even these folks recognize? Now, granted, the people that are saying we're wrong, it's always been the way it was. It's always been the way it was. Y'all are a bunch of tinfoil hat wearing people or whatever. You know what? You're right. I mean, what good would this show be? Without having the right kind of hat as I'm discussing this stuff. So I'm just thinking.
You've got one too.
Well, I'm going to wear it. I mean, dadgummit, I'm proud. I'm proud to wear it because, you know, they said clarity. What? We look. You are a professional tinfoil hat wearing person, Josh. What the hell?
Oh yeah, mine was hurting my head earlier.
Oh, good grief. Oh, you already been wearing yours. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna wear my. Yeah. Okay. I didn't know. I didn't see. See, I ain't paying attention. But anyway, the point they
Well,
said they're saying right here clarity for the public and consistency and fairness. um,
that
in
right
a
there
person.
says it all, Duke. Consistency and fairness. That means that somewhere along the way, enforcement agents in different places on a federal bird were not being consistent with the laws in different areas. So these guys that say it was always legal, we say it was always illegal, but they did this to clarify and to say, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and allow this.
In a press statement, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Director Jamie Rappaport Clark admitted that the proposal is based on input from state fish and wildlife agencies, in which there were 16, and of those 16, not all of them agreed with this. That wasn't the case. There was only 16 that had input. And sportsman groups. I can tell you that the people at the table, one of the conservation organizations that we've talked about tonight was one of the groups that was a part of this deal. But she
There was
insisted.
also groups that spoke against this deal too.
That's right.
So,
But listen to
and
this quote. But she insisted that, quote, no adverse effect on migratory bird populations would result. Well, would changing the migration, would that be an adverse effect or not? I think
exactly
it
right.
is. I think it is.
Yep.
Okay. Um,
If you look at that picture right there, Duke, I wish that thing was in color. I know that I've seen this one time before in color, and I cannot find my copy of it. But that right there is a partially harvested cornfield, and you can tell they flooded it. And look at what it says right below it. Heavy crop manipulation, as seen here, would become a legal activity under the proposed rules.
Yep, and underneath that, they go on to say, and this is an important part, under the agency's proposed rule change, hunters or commercial hunt club operators would be permitted to grow, cut, and then flood certain crops with mature seed heads. Why are they saying would be able to grow under the agency's proposed rule change? Hunters or commercial hunt club operators would be permitted to grow, cut, and then flood certain crops with mature seed heads. Why did they have to say, why are they saying and grow, then flood?
Mm-hmm.
And then flood? I
Yep.
mean, it just seems like a weird thing for them to make that distinction. Seems really weird. Uh, I just, I, I don't know. It just jumps out at me, whatever.
All
So
right,
Well,
and
yeah, it jumps out.
to let y'all know, I did post this white paper that y'all are showing and referencing and all that. I uploaded that to Facebook and then just shared out a link to it in the comments so that everybody will have access to it.
Good deal.
Okay, skip that. Almost done here. I think we're on first column, second to last paragraph. Uh, and I forgot. Read it to the end of the page. Okay. If enacted, they argue the new rules would take the sport on page 25, Rex. If enacted, they argue the new rules would take the sport out of hunting. Fair chase would become non existent. High numbers of birds would be killed in a short period, shot while eating and accustomed to the presence of humans. Slob hunters could lure birds with piles of food and shoot them at point blank range, noted an agent. There might be more challenges in shooting caged birds in a pet store. And that is where we get the term when we talk about these people who can't hunt birds, without the aid or the crutch of bait or flooded unharvested corn. I mean, and y'all know who you are. You're slob hunters. You need the lure to be able to kill. That's the bottom line. And here is they defined you. The there might be more challenge in shooting cage birds in a pet store. The freedom to speak their minds honestly and openly is unfortunately not an option for these public servants. In addition to repeated threats from congressmen to punish agents for discussing their personal views on baiting, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has also issued what amounts to gag orders on its officers. Special agents have been formally warned not to have any contact with outside groups on this hot button issue. A memo circulated a few days prior to public notification on the proposed rule change advises the agents to, in part, feel free to discuss among yourselves, but don't get caught going outside the agency. Congressman Young and Senator Bro, that would be John Bro from Louisiana, gave Director Clark a very difficult time over the fact that some agents were believed to be lobbying against the draft Migratory Bird Treaty Reform Bill. Young made it clear that he will hold hearings and agents accountable if they lobby against the bill and get caught. Be careful. He means business. So, yeah, Rex, does that not stink to you?
Well, yeah. So, yeah, it does. I mean, it just goes back to, the quote right there: "Be careful. He means business."
It's sad to me that one of our own, and he might have thought that he was doing a good thing. Who knows what he was told? But because you can tell in that meeting, in the meeting minutes from all the hearing for everything to do with the Migratory Bird Treaty Reform, he was speaking like it was going to be a great thing. But yet they read this letter out at the meeting, and Audubon spoke out against it. The National Wildlife Federation spoke out about against it. There's another great article within this that they actually attached. I think it's in this, or either it referenced it. It was called the Ted Williams article. And how could Senator Bro read all of this and know basically if this goes through and these birds get shortstop, and if this is hurting the North American bird population, like they're saying it is, and like we are seeing now, how could he do that not only to the birds but to his own state? That's my feelings on it. I couldn't do that to my own state.
Well, and even a little further than that, to me, is the point that even if he's got people that disagree with his stance, it's kind of like here on the show. We don't want people that just agree with our stances, or Josh with you, or Duke with you, because then it becomes an echo chamber. You need to allow public discourse, even if you don't necessarily agree with it. And that's the big thing to
Yeah.
me.
Well,
Yeah.
in closing this out, and we're wrapping this up, I think these last two paragraphs of this is probably, it's still a good message, I think, today. And, yeah, look, I ain't always been a fan of the possum cops. I'm going to tell you right now, I think there's some of them guys I'd like to take out behind the company man shack, no doubt. But there's a greater majority of them, and I think this encompasses some of the biologists as well too. They're the Yanceys, of waterfowl management and all. There's a lot more good people than there are dirt bags that were in. There's dirt bags in everything, but there was a lot of good people in this thing, and I think the people who were really concerned here were sincere. And these final last two paragraphs were on point, and I'm going to read those real quick. The message U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service agents would like the public to hear in regard to attempts to liberalize baiting regulations is simple. Protection of the resource should be the primary objective here instead of increasing kills. After committing themselves to the pursuit of this cause day in and day out in the field, they are understandably disappointed that their agency is more concerned with its own self-protection than it is for the protection of migratory game birds. Some agents maintain a fatalistic attitude about the ultimate impact of impending changes in the Migratory Treaty Act law. Maybe we shouldn't worry about the baiting regulations, suggests an agent. When the ducks end up on the endangered species list, we can finally go back to protecting them. That was
took
it.
a while for all those changes to get us to where we are right now. But I honestly think the people who wanted all this, they never expected further up the flyway the amount of acreage and the amount of commercial operations that has started utilizing this practice in numerous different states and across the nation. They never expected it to happen this quick. They never expected that many birds to be harvested. And now we are seeing exactly what all these agents talked about. And that's me looking at the numbers and knowing what these guys said. And I'm not the smartest man on the planet, but I can tell you it's common sense if you read any of this.
Yep. But common sense is out the window. And I've got my tinfoil hat on, so I'm certified.
I guess I'm the odd man out. I should have had mine made.
You didn't get the message.
I didn't get the memo
All
for
right.
that.
That's all I got.
Thank y'all, fellas.
All right, I'm going to hit the finish button. We would like to thank everybody that is watching now, has watched before, and will be hopefully watching this in the future. As a reminder, Facebook does delete live shows after 30 days. Their new stupid rule. So if you want to see this show after 30 days, make sure and subscribe on YouTube. And we will see everybody on the next Flyway series, which will be probably sometime next week. We will try to get a timely notice posted before the next show. How about that, guys?
Sound like a plan.
Thank you, guys.
Good night.
No.